What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. What's up, Sean? What's up, Braden? What's up, Fantasy Football Girl Advice? What is up, everybody? We got pre-show shenanigans. Yeah, well, we're calling it a free-for-all. We're going to talk about the latest draft balls or whatever else is on your mind. A very interactive show today. You guys are going to kind of drive the conversation. We got a lot of fun. We got the Patriots in the news with some draft buzz that I think will have us talking for a little bit, so we'll talk about that. The odds shifted a bunch yesterday for the number 1 overall pick, which was interesting. What's up, Raul? Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Hope everybody is enjoying the start to their Friday. But yeah, lots of draft buzz to discuss here on the show. Looking forward to it. We're learning about a lot of teams' top 30 visits, which you can read into if you'd like. You should just take note of it. Steve Keim's talking a lot recently, which is interesting. About a lot of stuff here. So I am just getting everything, as you know, ready on my end here. We were tweeted out. We're in the Discord. We've done all that stuff, but just want to give a couple of minutes here before we start. Just turned 8 o'clock, so give a couple minutes to file everybody in. If you got some pre-show stuff you'd like to address and get talking to, go ahead, throw it in there. But we will start the actual recording of the show here in just a second. Just compiling all of the sources for the stories that we're going to talk about today. And then obviously whatever you guys want to talk about. So just getting all that stuff ready to go. While also trying to not cough into the microphone. I've had to mute a couple times already to not cough. After the Cardinals lose, they should forfeit their first-round pick, to be honest. Well, Raul, they made the arbitration claim Terry McDonough did. They're going to do an investigation more than likely, so you got to let the process play out, right? The Dolphins didn't lose their pick until the entire investigation process played out, so we'll due process. We'll let the whole thing play out. Good morning, Tuttle. How are you today? Happy Friday. A Draft Buzz Friday here on the show. That's the way we are describing this show. So if there's a Sports Nut, I have no idea. I have no idea who's going to be drafted number 1 overall. I think it's Bryce. I predicted CJ when the trade went down, but there's a lot of noise in that direction. You can barely hear. Sports Nut. Let me see here. Could be a me problem. No, it doesn't look like a me problem. Looks like I've got everything. I'll turn my mic up just a touch here for you, but that's about as far as it can go before it'll be me screaming. So that's what I got for you. Braden, it's a great point. A player will be drafted number 1 overall. I'll transition into the full screen. But yes, Braden is 100% correct. Braden with the smartest take of the day so far. A player will be drafted with the number 1 overall pick. Can confirm. Hold on, guys. What if we allowed, what if we let, Chat GPT pick the first overall pick? What do you think Chat GPT would say about this? You think they would take Bryce Young? You think they would take CJ Stroud? What do you think? You think this might be? Hold on here, folks. I haven't used ChatGPT yet for almost anything, but this might be worth a shout here. I gotta sign up for ChatGPT? Nah, we'll do it another time then. An interesting rumor I heard in another Discord server. That's a great source on that, Raul. One team looking to trade up to number 3, the Vikings. All right. So you guys are playing along with the bit. You have a bunch of questions, a bunch of things. We're going to start the show, and then we will get to all of this. Here we go. And welcome into the Friday edition of the TDN Daily Podcast. Chris Schubert back with you once again on the show. A happy Friday to you all. A free-for-all, a draft buzz edition of the show. The YouTube comments, the YouTube live chat taking over the show here on a Friday. They've been asking a ton of questions about the draft buzz. We've got a story about the Patriots. We're talking about who should go number one. So I said, you know what? Let's push the button. Let's get the show started. And so the chat is going to be taking over the show here today. We were talking about letting ChatGPT make the first overall selection and see what they say. So we've got a lot of stuff that we could potentially get to here over the course of the show. And again, a very interactive show here today on a Friday, going to be reacting exactly to whatever you want to talk about. YouTube chat here on the show today. I've got a couple things planned, but overall it's going to be you guys driving the boat here today. And we will start with the conversation that we were just having in the pre-show about who will be drafted number one overall. And I don't think it's a shock to anybody that the odds yesterday got a little wild. I don't know if any of you guys saw this, but the odds shifted dramatically throughout the day to where Bryce Young, for a brief period of time, was the betting favorite to be the number one overall pick. He's gone back to being the second best odds. CJ Stroud has moved back into being the favorite, but there was a brief period of stretch. It was a couple of hours yesterday in which those two guys kind of flipped spots. And everybody was freaking out. There's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of buzz, to use the theme of the show today. There's a lot of buzz trending in the direction of Bryce Young being the pick. Chris Mortensen came out and basically out loud was like, yeah, Bryce is the pick. Everybody in Carolina loves Bryce. He's going to be the selection. And I don't know if that was what drove this odds movement, because that news was, I think, a couple of days old at that point. But there was a lot of movement yesterday in the betting markets towards Bryce Young being the favorite to be the number one overall pick. And so, I was being asked in the pre-show who I thought would be drafted number one overall. And when the trade went down, I made a prediction on a Twitter Spaces that we did in which I said that I thought CJ Stroud was going to be the selection. I'm not so sure now. There does feel to be some level of PR momentum. There does appear to be some level of buzz trending in the direction of it being Bryce Young with the number one overall pick. So we shall see. Raul with the greatest source thing of all time says, an interesting rumor I heard in another Discord server. One team looking to trade up to number 3, the Vikings. And that's an interesting one. Raul, not one that I had heard pretty regularly. Or at all, really, that the Vikings could potentially be interested in moving up to number 3. I will tell you that would only probably pair itself with this report that the 49ers might be interested in trading for Kirk Cousins, right? That rumor appeared to come out of nowhere, that they could potentially trade Kirk Cousins to the Minnesota Vikings. Sorry for the cough there, everybody. But there was talk about them trading Kirk Cousins to San Francisco. And the question that I had with that is that wouldn't really make a lot of sense, because this roster is still pretty good. I mean, you got to think they would be the favorites in the division. The Lions would probably be close on their heels, but you got to think that the Vikings would be considered the favorite even with Kirk on the roster this year, with the Lions a close second. I don't know what to expect of the Packers in the first year of Jordan Love. They're still building things there in Chicago with Justin Fields. So again, a team that's pretty well made to be the favorite in that division. Trading their quarterback didn't make sense. Well, if you trade the quarterback and you're able to potentially get up to number 3 and snag a quarterback that way, maybe. But you got to be really sure that the guy that you like is going to get there at number 3. Sportsnut says, is there a real chance Will Anderson is not the first defensive player off the board? I mean, Sportsnut, there's always a chance. We talked about this on today's Prospects and Props podcast, easy for me to say, that got released, where I talked about the number 3 odds. And the betting odds have it as Will Anderson is the first defensive player on the board, and that tracks with everything that I believe about the Arizona Cardinals. It does still have a quarterback as the favorite. It's Anthony Richardson, at least according to FanDuel, the favorite to go number 3 overall, which is signaling a trade. But him being the defensive player, I mean, the number 2 defensive player, according to FanDuel, was Christian Gonzalez, which I think Tyree Wilson should be in front of Christian in that regard, to be the pick at number 3. Maybe not to be the Cardinals pick. If they trade down to maybe 7 or 8, I could see them going Christian Gonzalez. But I am pretty locked into Will Anderson being the first defensive player off the board. Fantasy Football Girl Advice says, what if the Texans go defense? Yeah, it's a great question. They throw a lot of things into flux. You would assume the pick would be Will Anderson at number 2. Does that create more urgency and more activity for the Cardinals at 3? That maybe C.J. Stroud gets past the first 2 picks, or Bryce Young gets past the first 2 picks, or Anthony Richardson, Will Levis get past the first 2 picks. Does it create more urgency? Does it set up for a team to try to call up to get to number 3? It could, because then at that point there would be 3 quarterbacks available with the number 3 pick, and obviously there's probably going to be teams that like certain quarterbacks over others. And yeah, you could very easily see a scenario where Houston taking a defensive player at number 2 dramatically shifts the balance of power of what teams want to do with number 3. Again, I'm of the belief that the Cardinals trading number 3 will be a draft night trade, specifically based on the way the quarterbacks fall at 1 and 2, or don't fall at 1 and 2 in the case of Houston taking a defensive player. I don't think Arizona is going to make a trade ahead of time with a team before the start of night 1, before they are on the clock for that 10-minute stretch with pick number 3. I truly believe that the Cardinals are going to have to let the board play out before they see who could potentially be interested in moving up to number 3 to make a selection for a quarterback. Does Brzee fall out of round 1? I don't know. That's a great question. There's a lot of players that I think would fall into the bucket of they're going to their floor and ceiling is going to be directly dependent on what happens at the top of the group here, of the top of the draft, those top probably 6 or 7 picks. And I think Brzee is one of those players who's going to be directly impacted on what kind of run we see early at certain positions, and does that impact teams? I mean, because I'll give you an example. If there's a run on, edge rushers early, does that force a team to maybe want to move up to make sure they get their guy because there is a run that they didn't think was going to happen, and they want to make sure they get their guy, right? Or with the corners, it's the same thing. Those are a couple of positions where if a run happens maybe a little bit earlier, or let's say a run happens at those 2 positions lead toward the tackles to move down, and now all of a sudden Paris Johnson's available at 15 or 16, does a team now go, wow, we didn't expect Paris Johnson to get to 15 or 16. It's much easier for us to move up from, let's say, 26, 27, 28. I'm just picking numbers. I don't know what teams are picking in that spot. I think the Bills picked 27, and they would need offensive line help, so we'll use them. Could they move up? It's much easier to move up from a value perspective from 27 to 16 than it would to move up from 27 to 12, right? I mean, the value is just a lot different, or to move inside the top 10. So, again, there are players who are going to be caught up in that storm. Could Brzee be one of them? Brian Brzee? Yeah, I think so. I certainly think that could be the case. Brayden says, do you feel like there will be more trades in round 1 than what we saw in the last few years? I'm skeptical. Everybody likes, this is that time of year, and we do this every single year, right? We do it every year where the expectation is, lots of value, lots of teams are going to trade, there's going to be a lot of movement. You need 2 teams to be able to make a trade. You need 2 willing parties to be able to make a deal. And I think it's really tough to sit here right now and say that, oh boy, we're going to have so many more trades. There's a lot of value. Teams want edge players, right? You always want to build your pass rush. Well, the edge class is really deep. You maybe don't need to make a trade. You may like 12, 15 guys at that position. You may be comfortable just sitting there and taking best player available when you're on the board. Same thing with the corners. Tight end's another position where if that's a major need for you, you can kind of sit back and wait. So I'm skeptical of the idea that there will be more trades in round 1, but I do think there are specific scenarios where it could happen, specifically if Houston doesn't take a quarterback at 2. I think that is one of the levers that we could switch to where trades could happen, because I think you see a trade at 3. I think you could see trades with 7 with Vegas, but I will tell you, like, I use my New York Jets as an example here, pick 13. I think they're in the worst spot in the world, because I think if all of the players that are, from a value perspective, reasonable for them to take at 13 are gone, I don't know if they're going to be able to find a trade candidate that wants to move up to 13 to get a player. The middle of the first round is kind of the wild, wild west. It's kind of a barren wasteland. The tumbleweeds are kind of rolling through in there. I don't know what's going to happen outside of maybe like pick 12. The teens are a weird spot this year, I think, from a value perspective. Tuttle says, if a quarterback is still on the board around pick 10, which team in the back half of the first round should trade up? Tuttle, I would ask a couple of follow-up questions in order to be able to answer this, but if Tennessee doesn't move up, I could see them trying to move up one spot from 11 to 10 to just solidify themselves as a quarterback. I know they've been kind of sniffing around at the idea of getting a quarterback, and if one falls to 10, they could move up one spot to be able to make that pick. Braden, I don't think it's a disappointing class overall. I think there's a lot of depth at some important positions, right? I think edge is extremely deep. I think corner is extremely deep. I think tight end is extremely deep. But like wide receiver, I think if you don't get one of the top 2 or 3 guys, does it really make sense to draft a first-round wide receiver? I think there's a really good day 2 value. Linebackers, I think there's great day 2 value, not really great value in round 1. And so when you match up team needs with what's going to be available, I think it creates a bit of a weirdness after like pick 12, right? I think the Jets down, it feels a little weird to see how this is going to play out. There's a ton of different avenues that could play out. I mean, we talk about this every year, but there are a lot of different permutations about if a certain player goes in a certain spot, it could cause a run, it could cause a ripple effect. We see it in the stock market all the time, right? One piece of news can cause the stock market to go up or go down, right? One player getting picked in a certain spot that people weren't anticipating could cause a lot of chaos, right? I mean, Cole Strange was that weird selection last year. That didn't cause a lot of chaos, but there could be a pick this year that causes a lot of chaos. So, Tuttle, I mean, I think Tampa could be a team that could trade up at 19 if they really want to get a quarterback. If Detroit doesn't take a quarterback with 6 and a quarterback is there at 10, I could see Detroit moving up. And you know Howie Roseman would be interested to move down from 10 probably. He loves doing stuff like that. I could see Seattle moving up from 20 if they would be interested. If a quarterback gets all the way to 10 and Baltimore really doesn't feel like they can bring back Lamar Jackson and the guy that they like is there, they could move up from 22. Minnesota, we talked about them a little earlier. I think it's much more conceivable for them to move from 23 to 10 than it is for them to move from 23 to 3. So, I mean, that would be the way that I feel about it. There could be teams. There's a laundry list of teams that I think could consider it, but a certain player would have to be there. Sportsnet, what does San Francisco have left to trade and how much money after they pay Bosa and just pay the D tackles? Yeah, it's a great question. Their cap situation is a little interesting. We'll see what they decide to do. Again, I'm skeptical of the idea of them trading for Kirk Cousins. I am. I think they're going to roll this season with Trey Lance and Sam Darnold in the early going, and then when Brock Purdy's back, he's going to be his team. What's up, Sam? I agree that Broderick Jones is more likely to fall than Parrish Johnson. I was just using him as a very extreme example. Sam says, I've got 7 top 60 grades on O tackles, 5 second-round grades on tight ends, 7 top 60 grades on edges, and 8 top 60 grades on corners. Yeah, I mean, those are the positions, right? I mean, I didn't even mention offensive tackle when we were doing this conversation, but there's another group that you can throw in there as well. Cowboys trade up for Bijan Robinson. Where are they picking right now? Where's Dallas picking? They're picking 26. He could be there at 26. Bijan's really weird, man. I love not the person. Bijan, the evaluation. I love Bijan. I think Bijan's a top 5, probably top 3 player. Might be the best player in the class. I think Bijan's special. I think Bijan is one of the best running back prospects we've seen come out in a really long time. Everything is just effortless. He moves in a way that none other running backs can move. He has production at every level of his career. I mean, he was one of the best high school running backs in the country. He played down in Tucson, Arizona. At the time, I was working a weekly Friday night high school football show as the producer running the board. And each and every week, we were talking about what did Bijan do that specific night, right? It was just another casual X number of yards and X number of touchdowns, right? So Bijan then came to Texas and followed that up and was great at the Division I top program level. But he could get to 26 because people don't value the running back position. So it's going to be weird. But if he gets to 26, I think Dallas will have a very, very weird conversation to be had, and they will probably strongly consider it. Detroit would never trade up from 18 for a quarterback. Never. I don't know about that. I'm not so sure. I think if they don't take a quarterback at 6 and they truly want to take a quarterback and a guy that they like is, they're inside of, let's say, 10, 11, 12, they could consider it. I don't think it's likely. I will tell you, I don't think it's likely. I think Detroit's very comfortable with what they have in Jared Goff as their quarterback, and they're comfortable using 2 picks in the first round to support that quarterback. But to Tuttle's question was which teams should trade up. I think Detroit could be on the list. I think they could. I don't know if I would, but it should be on the list. Sam says, granted, Skoronski, Bergeron, and Wright might be better off playing guard than tackle. Yeah, I mean, Skoronski and Bergeron are guard people that are 2 players that people consider should kick inside. So that would kind of change the way you feel about them and the tackle position at large. I've seen drafts where the Vikings take Hendon Hooker. What is your take on him in the ACL tear? Well, you've got an older player. He's 26, about to be 27, coming off an ACL tear. And you worry about the short sample size of success in Tennessee's offense. That's very, very different than what would be done at the NFL level. That being said, I like Hendon Hooker a lot. I like the mobility. I like the athleticism. I like the growth that he showed from Virginia Tech to Tennessee. And the concerns that I have about the offense, if I was a team that was talking to Hendon Hooker, I could get an answer to what understanding he has of what is being asked of him and how he's able to process things, and that would alleviate a lot of the concerns that I would have of, man, he's just in a Josh Heupel offense that is asking him to do just a certain number of things, and then not really understand more complex aspects of the offense, right? You can get that answer by interviewing him and putting him on a whiteboard. But just from a tape perspective, I love the athleticism. I love the mobility. And I think in the right scheme, he could do really well. I think in a scheme that doesn't ask him, I'll give you an example. I think schemes like San Francisco scheme, New York scheme, Houston scheme, Miami scheme, again, all off of that Shanahan tree where they scheme guys open. And they do a lot of the hard work for the quarterback in terms of making it pretty easy for them to understand of what to read. I think he could thrive in those type of environments. And so, again, this is why I'm of the belief that Houston should maybe not take a quarterback with 2 or 12, because I think they could get Hendon at 33, or if they are concerned and they really want to move up, they've got a great pick in the second round that they could move back into the first round and get Hendon Hooker. So, I like Hendon a lot. Again, the age is a concern. The ACL tear, I think, is something you need to worry about. But again, you're going to be able to talk to this guy. Again, I haven't talked to him because, I don't have the resources to be able to talk to him, right? But teams, they meet with him. They bring him in for top 30 visits. They were able to see the medicals. They're able to see all that stuff, right? And so they're going to have a better gauge of the way things are with Hendon and how well he's progressing to be able to be ready potentially for training camp, or at what point they think he is going to be ready. So I like Hendon. I think if he didn't get hurt, he was probably in line to be a Heisman candidate, a Heisman finalist, potentially the Heisman winner, and I think the buzz around him would be a little different. But I think Hendon is going to hear his name called pretty early. I think top 45 is pretty likely for Hendon, and I think there are people that aren't as concerned about the ACL tear and the age as maybe others are. Sportsnut, could the depth of this tight end class cause some of these tight ends to drop because teams may not want to spend a top pick on one where they think they could get a good one in round 2 or 3? Yeah, it's a great question. And I think there is a conversation to be had about where these teams stack these guys on the board. If they stack 2 or 3 of them close together, then yes, what you're talking about is very, very real. It's a very real possibility where they're like, well, we have all these 3 guys stacked together. We'll wait. We'll take this player at this position because there's a big gap and we want to make sure we check this box for our team, right? But if they don't, if there is a gap, if there is a big tier break between these guys, then maybe not. Maybe they won't drop. If there's a big gap between the way a team feels about Dalton Kincaid than a Luke Musgrave, and Dalton Kincaid's on the board when they pick in the back half of the first round, they might take him. Tight end's a weird position. There are mocks where you'll see 3 tight ends go in the first round, and you're like, yeah, makes sense. All those team fits make sense. All those players make sense as first rounders. And then you'll see a mock draft where like 1 will go or none will go, and you'll be like, yeah, that also makes sense because the players that are in there, they're all worthy of being first round talent. So what a weird group to try to evaluate from a mock draft perspective. Any other questions that you guys have you want to throw in here? I'm going to mute for just a second here so that I can cough. Going a extended period of time there without coughing was was rough. But yeah, any other things that you guys have here on this free-for-all NFL Draft Buzz edition of TDN Daily? I will tell you a story that I did want to bring up here. A tweet that I saw this morning in doing some prep for the show that I thought was really, really interesting. Speaking of running backs, Evan Lazar, who covers the Patriots for Patriots.com, staff writer and the host of Patriots Catch 22 over there, quote tweeted an athletic story and said the Patriots quietly showing interest in another blue chip back in the draft is something. There are only 2 blue chippers in the draft, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, meaning they would have to be early on if they take one. And this was from an athletic story that was talking about the Patriots and maybe their draft strategy. The Patriots currently pick, just making sure that we know where they pick. They pick 14th. I'm not so sure that they would pick a running back at 14. They might. Jahmyr Gibbs at 14 would be a little rich. Bijan at 14 would make sense from a value perspective, right? I mean, I think he's a top 3 player in the class. So at 14, it's great value. But will they do it? Is that something that New England is interested in doing? Not so sure. Not so sure. I'm skeptical. The buzz is out there, though. But I'm skeptical of them doing it with 14. Do you think Mac Jones really may be traded? I don't. There's a lot of buzz there, but that buzz is a little late in the process for me to buy a lot of stock into when it's kind of come out of nowhere. A few weeks out, how likely do you think both running backs go? I do not think both running backs go in the first round. I think Bijan goes, but I do not think Jahmyr Gibbs goes. Sam asks, who is a prospect you think is overrated? Overrated. Okay. I have the TDN 100 up. I'm going to scroll through to see if there's a name that really okay, here's a guy. I'll give you a guy that that we have as a top 15 player that I understand why he's viewed highly. I'm just skeptical because of the lack of tape from this past year. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a guy that concerns me, right? The injuries from last year, the fact that he didn't play a lot, I would have great concerns of making him a top 15 selection, right? I would have some pause. I know he kind of checked a lot of the boxes at his pro day that people were waiting on, right? And that was a good thing for him, and that kind of helped him in that regard. But I'm skeptical, right? I just am. It for me, and again, I'm not a scout. I'm not a member of the TDN scouting team, right? I don't scout the way that they do. But for me, your best ability is availability. And I like guys who are out there and are playing, and I can see the growth from year to year to year. And him not playing this past year was a concern for me, right? It hurt his stock a lot, and he wasn't really able to answer some of the questions that we did have. So that would be one that I would immediately throw out as somebody that I would be overrated is probably too strong of a word, but somebody that I have concerns about. Sports Dot, how many wide receivers go round 1, and what are your thoughts on Mingo? I saw an NFL Network say they're hearing he could go high as early second. How many wide receivers go round 1? Well, I think Quentin Johnston's probably a lock. After everything I just said, I still think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a lock. We've seen a lot of Zay Flowers buzz lately. We've seen a lot of Josh Downs buzz lately. I'll say 3. 3 feels good. I love Addison Braden over Quentin Johnston. I think Addison throughout this process has been forgotten. Not his fault. I just think he's been forgotten. I think the guy had an incredible year at Pitt, went to USC, played great in that offense, still put up productions. I think the size is the concern that people have there with Addison, but I think Addison is going to be an immediate impact player right away. I like Addison a lot. Sam says some big name guys I have third-round grades on: Tucker Kraft, Jalen Hyatt, Cody Mock, Mozzie Smith, Felix Anudike-Uzoma, Keon White, Adetomo Adebore, and Emmanuel Forbes. Those are some high-profile names that you've got third-round grades on, yeah, for sure. Marvin Mims doesn't get enough love yet. We've been talking about him inside TDN staff meetings. Now, how high does Mingo go? I don't know, Sports Nut. You're asking me to like predict, like, for specific. It just ranges, right? Like, it's just I don't feel comfortable. You just heard me talk about, that I only think 3 wide receivers are gonna go, but like, what aren't there some talks about like Mingo kicking in and to be a tight end, and like that matters too, like how teams evaluate a guy. You know, there are people that think he might need to be a tight end in that spot. So if a team evaluates him as a wide receiver, you got to lump him with the rest of those guys. If they evaluate him as a tight end, you got to lump him with the rest of those guys. So, you know, that's a concern. Braden says somewhere in round 2, I would guess for Mingo for sure on day 2 in my opinion. Yeah, that feels about right. I think he's going to hear his name called on day 2. Provide a specific. No, Sam, I'm not doing that. No, I know you're just trolling, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not gonna have a take here that you guys can clip and then forever be like, oh, Chris said Mingo's gonna go. I'm not doing that. Not calling my shot. Maybe. Listen, it's the 7th. Maybe when we get closer, I'll start doing that when we've got a little bit more information, but not right now. We'll do it. Here's what I will promise you. On this show, in one of the last shows before the draft, maybe even the Wednesday before, we will be live on this YouTube channel, and I will do my predictive mock live with you guys, okay? And so you will see me. It might take 2.5 hours for us to do this, but you will, and your thoughts will be in there as well, but you will see my entire thought process. You will see me go, wait, don't like that pick after thinking about it for 5 minutes. We will do that here on the show. So that is what I will promise you, that at some point on this show, the week of the draft, we will do that here live on the YouTube channel, okay? That is what I will tell you. Jets going offensive tackle in round 1 to protect Rodgers. Likely. I think it is very likely that the Jets take a tackle in round 1 to protect Aaron Rodgers. I will tell you, it is April 7th, and Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback of the New York Jets. So they're right now protecting Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson. So as of this moment, they're not protecting Aaron Rodgers. I will make this the last call for show-related questions. Before we get out of here on the podcast feed. And then we'll do the post-show shenanigans after that. So this will be the last call for those questions that will make it into the airing of the show on the podcast. I'm not doing a predictive 7-round mock, Sam. It's not happening. I'm not making 200 some odd picks. No. I'll do a predictive first round. I didn't submit one last year for the contest. But I will do one for the show this year. Maybe we'll submit it. Maybe. But I did not do one last year. Tim Boyle, Packers legend. Yes, now current starting quarterback for the New York Jets because Zach Wilson is QB2, so Tim Boyle is the starting quarterback for the New York Jets right now. So that's that. We have that. So again, last call for all questions related to the show, and then we'll hang out in the post-show shenanigans. And for those of you in the podcast feed that are listening to this 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time each and every day on the Draft Network YouTube channel, we go live. Today's a bit more of an interactive show. We're making it a bit of a free-for-all, so you're hearing me banter with the chat a little bit more than I normally do. But you can be a part of this each and every day, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the TDN YouTube channel. Could the Ravens target Hendon Hooker with the situation with Lamar? They could. I just think if they go into draft night and there's no certainty in that regard, and they have not, figured out a dance partner to make a trade, or they haven't figured out a contract, I just think because there's so much uncertainty, they won't go down that path. Braden, anyone you want the Jets to absolutely not draft? Peter Skoronski is somebody that I want the Jets to absolutely not draft. I think you have to kick him inside, and the Jets need tackle help. I don't think they need help on the interior. So, Laken Tomlinson and Elijah Vera Tucker are going to be on the interior, I think, this year, as long as they get a tackle in the draft. So that would be one player. That is one. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the podcast feed of the show. Appreciate everybody making this show a part of your day, rating, reviewing, subscribing, following along with us here as we grow our first week of the YouTube version in the books. Again, come on and join us, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube channel. We have a lot of fun. You see the pre-show, the post-show, the putting of the show together. So greatly appreciated everybody who hangs out over there with us. But everyone listening to the podcast feed, hope everybody has a great Friday and a great weekend. I'll talk to you all on Monday. And now we are in the post-show. So any post-show questions that you guys have, any off-the-wall stuff, if you want to continue this draft buzz conversation, we can do that for the next half hour or so. I'm feeling better. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I am feeling a little bit better. The cough is annoying more than anything. Very, very annoying cough. That's why we're drinking the sugar-free Powerade today on the show. But I will take I will take any outstanding questions. If it's draft related, if it's not draft related, if it's not football related, do whatever you want for the last half hour or so of the show. Are we sure that this Patriots thing, like, why would the Patriots take a running back? With 14? Would they take a running back with 14? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't track. Favorite color Gatorade? Oh, boy. Favorite color Gatorade? My favorite color of Gatorade. Glacier Freeze. Lemon Lime. Those would be two. Those would be two that I will stand on the table for right now. But guys, I know I was saying because Bill, but like what? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Now, if he takes Bijan, it's a good player. He's a great player. And he'll probably do well, but goodness gracious. We got a lot of other needs. Do you expect any number 3 pick trade would happen on the clock or before draft day? It would happen on the clock, Total. I do not believe that they would trade the pick ahead of time. I think they could have traded the pick ahead of time if Carolina didn't move to number 1 and Chicago was still picking there. But I think now teams are going to need to see how the board falls at number 1 and number 2 before they entertain calling Arizona. Now, our conversation's probably happening of like, hey, Arizona, if this player's on the board, like, we'll be interested, we'll circle back. Yeah, like those conversations are probably happening and the frameworks are probably in place because they're having those conversations. But like an actual send the card in, call the league office, we're making this official. No, I think that will happen while the Cardinals are on the clock. Zach Charbonnet is more of a Pats back. Agree 100%, Sam. He fits so much the identity and vision that they want to have. I really think there's a chance they could mutually part ways in New England if they miss the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I think after another bad season that this could be Sean McVay's last season. Could be. I thought he could retire after the Super Bowl. Got on TV, made a ton of money, but he's sticking around. So it certainly could be something that he considers. The roster's pretty old, so they're going to be very, very dependent on Matt Stafford being healthy. And if he isn't healthy, then I think it's going to be a train wreck. It might be a train wreck even if he's healthy. And then, of course, I think the questions will be asked about McVay and whether what he wants to do moving forward. If TV is still something that he's interested in, it's something he could do. Jahmyr Gibbs makes sense. Not to go back to this Patriot thing. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs makes sense if they wanted to pick him at, I think they picked 46. They could pick him at 46, or they could move up to get him. Like, that's fine. Brain says, more favorite questions for you, Chris. Favorite Jet of all time and favorite Met of all time. My favorite Jet of all time is Chad Pennington. My favorite Met of all time is David Wright. It used to be Mike Piazza. But Piazza's peak was when, like, I was a really, really young kid. So I didn't get to see, like, peak Piazza. You know, I was 7 when he hit the famous home run. And that was kind of like past the peak of his career, like 99 and 2000 when they were really good. They made the World Series in 2000. They lost in the NLCS to the Braves in 99. Or what happened in 99? I know they made the playoffs in 99. Did they lose to the Giants that year? Like those years, I was like 5 or 6. So, but David Wright, like his entire existence, I was, I have better memories of, fonder memories of. Favorite way to procrastinate. Favorite way to procrastinate. Also the Braves, by the way. I was right. My gut was correct. My favorite way to procrastinate. I go down like podcast rabbit holes, and I will listen to a ton of podcasts, which, obviously is terrible for me when what I do is an audio medium and I need to be listening to things. But I listen to a ton of podcasts. Like, that is my favorite way to not do like stuff. to not do work. I just listen to podcasts all the time. How much patience will the Raiders have with McDaniels this year if it starts to go off the rails? I think they'll have a ton of patience with him. I don't think they're in a position. I don't think they're in a position to move on financially. I really don't. Where will Ohtani be playing next year? The New York Mets is where Shohei Ohtani will be playing next year. He might be playing there by the end of this year. I would say my favorite Royal is Alec Gordon. Seeing his entire career and it being all in Kansas City. Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about David, right? I mean, his entire career is in one place. So, with Mike, he'd been in a bunch of different places before he came to the Mets and went to places after, right? So, all right. Any other football questions? Not that I don't mind the baseball questions, but we try to keep it on football. Jacob Sanders, should we add a one-handed catch challenge to the Pro Bowl? We can. Listen, I thought the Pro Bowl was unique this year. They chose the lane that they were in of this is going to be a fun competitive thing that's going to just be like weird stuff. Dodgeball, the accuracy challenge, all that stuff. I'm good. You want to add more stuff like a one-handed catch challenge? Sure. Like it could be, hold on. Jacob, I think you're onto something here. The way we have the dunk contest in football, we could have like a wide receiver catch challenge of like they could do obstacles that they'll like jump over to try to make a catch and we can grade it. I like this. I think we're onto something here. They should bring back the ball drop event at the Pro Bowl. I don't know what you're referencing, Sam. I can't tell you the last time I watched any of the Pro Bowl festivities. The only reason why I watched the Pro Bowl festivities this year is we were doing a live show and it was on the TV while we were doing the live show in Mobile. That was it. And it was the accuracy challenge. It was the night that Derek Carr, said, I've never been that hot. Throwing the ball is probably why they don't want me here anymore. But that's the only thing I've seen. They already do that. They already do what I said. They already do the idea that I have. Well, okay. Tuttle, the four top QBs are different enough. It really highlights the eye of the beholder and what teams value or are betting on for their future team success. Yes, and I think that's why they have a catch challenge. Okay, well, there's my ignorance showing because I think that would be a great idea, and they clearly already do it. Great, shows you how much I care about the Pro Bowl, Sam. Shows you how much I care about the Pro Bowl. To Tuttle's question. Or to Tuttle's comment. Yeah, I mean, I think this is why I don't think a trade will happen for number 3 until they see how the board plays out. That's why I think teams aren't trying to call Arizona and banging down the door for number 3. Now that Carolina's picking 1, and maybe the expectation is Houston's going to take a quarterback at 2, you can't get into either of those spots. Right? Those two teams have boxed you out. So you then have to wait until number 3 to see if the guy that you want is there. Now, if the guy you want is there, if you in your front office are pounding the table for Will Levis and he's there at number 3, then great. You can go ahead and make the trade up for number 3. But if you are pounding the table for Bryce Young and he gets taken with the number 1 overall pick, now you might not be interested anymore. If that's your guy, if that's the guy you're pounding the table for, that's your QB1, that's the guy you want. And so that's the juxtaposition of, and to your point, the eye of the beholder part of this. It's okay, Jacob. You didn't really lead me astray. I took what you said and I ran with it, and it was my fault. I don't blame you one bit. I don't blame you one bit for this. But yeah, I think the quarterbacks are going to be fascinating. I really do. Houston's really going to be fascinating at number 2. I think we all expect Carolina to take a quarterback at number 1. It's just which one. Number 2, I do think there's a legitimate possibility Houston doesn't take a quarterback, and that would be chaotic. Chaotic. All right, I will make this the final call so I can go take some medicine before our staff meeting today, and I can go blow my nose because there's congestion going on right now. Who do you think is a fit as a first-round trade partner for the Chargers? Who do I think is a fit, a first-round trade partner, to trade back? All right, not a question I've ever been asked, Jacob, so I appreciate the question. Let me pull up the list here and give you a possible team. The Chargers are picking 21 in the first round. Technically the 22nd pick because Miami has forfeited their pick at 21, but they're picking 21st. It's a great question. You're going to hate this answer, Jacob, but it's going to depend on who falls, right? I think if Bijan falls, a team might be interested in moving up. And then they could be, any of those teams that could maybe want a Bijan Robinson. We just talked about New England potentially being interested. They could want to trade back up. If a corner falls, I could see a team like the Giants wanting to move up a couple spots. I could see Jacksonville trying to move up a couple spots to solidify a corner if one falls that they really like. I could see Cincinnati or Buffalo moving up if a tackle falls that they really want to get a tackle. Specifically in Buffalo's case, I know Cincinnati signed Orlando Brown, but they do need offensive line help. But I could see Cincinnati moving up for an interior player if they want somebody on the inside. Like, I could see those two teams moving up. So it's just a couple. Tuttle brings up a great point. The Eagles could move up from 30 if a certain player falls. If you were a draft prospect, they're live for round one, would you hug Goodell or just dap it up with him? Can I do both? Why can't I do both? Why can't I have worked out a handshake with him beforehand and then go for the bro hug? I think both are on the table, Braden. I don't like that you're boxing me into just one or the other. I would do both. Yeah, no problem, Jacob. It's just a question I've never really considered, right? I mean, I've never considered the idea of the Chargers trading down. Maybe we should, but just these types of moves. Again, you could do this with everybody, right? And so it's just haven't given it thought for all 31 selections. So appreciate everybody hanging out here with us here on a Friday. I know some new faces. Jacob, I think you're new. We've had some couple new faces pop in here on the show today. So greatly appreciated everybody hanging out with us. If you are new, we do this every single day, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We record TDN Daily. You guys get to see the kind of production of the show. You guys get to be a part of the show. And so we do this every day, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll be back on Monday doing this again. If you are new, please follow the Draft Network on YouTube. Please hit the notification bell so you get the notification when we go live so you can be in here in the pre-show shenanigans. But yeah, I greatly appreciate everybody being a part of the show today. It does help me out a ton, so we do appreciate it here. But please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast feed apps. And everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy whatever chaos could potentially come over the next couple of days, and you know that we'll be back talking about it on Monday. So everybody have a great weekend. Appreciate everybody hanging out.